Friends, if you want to watch the hilarious classic comedy The Naked Gun, 1988, in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel because today's video is going to be full of fun and entertainment. Friends, in today's video, we are going to talk about The Naked Gun, from the files of Police Squad. We will cover everything you need to know about this movie, from where you can watch it, to some amazing and interesting facts that make this film a timeless comedy. In this video, I will tell you where this film is available, whether it's on any OTT platform, or which satellite channel might be showing it. We will dive into the details of its technical department, music, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, and even the box office collection. I will also tell you about the story of this film, and give you a short review of the film's plot. Apart from that, we will explore the funny and unique facts about this film, the storyline, the star cast, the performances, and who played which character in the film. Friends, that's why I request you to stay with me and watch this video till the end, because it's going to be a fun ride. So, let's start the video. The story of The Naked Gun, from the files of Police Squad, unfolds in the most wildly unpredictable and delightfully chaotic way possible. It doesn't bother much with being a conventional film. Instead, it grabs the formula of a serious crime drama and flips it completely on its head. Right from the beginning, we meet the legendary detective Frank Drebin, a man so clueless yet so determined that his every step leads to disaster, but somehow, things always work out in the end. The story kicks off when Frank returns from a mission only to discover that his partner has been attacked while investigating a major crime. Frank, with his over-the-top seriousness and hilariously bad instincts, dives headfirst into the case, uncovering a conspiracy to assassinate Queen Elizabeth II during her visit to Los Angeles. The film follows a pretty straightforward structure on the surface, a detective chasing clues, facing obstacles, and racing against time to stop a crime, but the way it tells the story is anything but normal. Every scene is filled with visual gags, wordplay, and jokes that hit you from every direction. The plot pretends to be serious, but the comedy never lets up. There's a love story too, where Frank falls for Jane Spencer, the assistant to the film's villain. Their romantic moments are intentionally awkward and ridiculously funny, adding another layer of charm to the narrative. As Frank fumbles through his investigation, each key turning point is delivered with a twist of slapstick, making even the most intense moments absurdly hilarious. One of the biggest turning points is the discovery that the villain plans to use mind control to carry out the assassination. The idea is played completely straight by the characters, but is presented with such ridiculous setups that you can't help but laugh throughout. The final act builds up to a chaotic baseball game where the Queen's life is in danger, and Frank must stop the hypnotized baseball player from carrying out the assassination. The way Frank handles the situation is clumsy, loud, and a perfect example of the film's unique comedy style. Even when the stakes are high, the film never loses its playful tone. What makes the narrative so fun is that it plays with expectations. It takes the familiar detective story structure and fills it with unpredictable, laugh-out-loud moments. The audience is always waiting for what ridiculous thing might happen next, whether it's Frank causing a disaster while thinking he's saving the day, or accidentally uncovering the truth in the most bizarre ways. The story doesn't experiment with time or non-linear storytelling, but it plays with perspective by showing us a hero who sees himself as the best detective in the world while the audience sees a man who is completely unaware of the chaos he creates. It's a film where the plot exists to support the comedy, but somehow the story is still exciting and keeps you hooked from beginning to end. In The Naked Gun, from the files of Police Squad, the characters are some of the most entertaining and exaggerated personalities you'll ever meet, but that's exactly what makes them so memorable. They aren't layered in the traditional emotional sense, but they are built to deliver comedy gold in every scene, and that's where their brilliance lies. Let's start with Detective Frank Drebin, the heart and chaos of the movie. Frank is a man who takes his job very seriously, but has absolutely no idea how much trouble he causes wherever he goes. He is clueless, clumsy, and completely unaware of his own mistakes. What makes Frank so lovable is that he never gives up, no matter how badly things fall apart around him. His motivation is simple: stop the bad guys and save the day. But the way he goes about it is so full of disaster that you can't help but cheer for him even as you're laughing at his every move. Frank doesn't go through a huge transformation, but his journey is more about his accidental heroics than personal growth. His confidence never wavers, even when he's causing complete mayhem, and that's what drives the story forward in the most fun way possible. Jane Spencer, Frank's love interest, brings a sweet but equally comical energy to the film. She's smart, kind, and somehow falls for Frank despite his complete lack of finesse. Their relationship is one of the film's funniest threads, filled with awkward conversations, over-the-top romantic moments, and a lot of unintentional mishaps. Jane's role isn't about personal change either. It's about playing the perfect straight character against Frank's never-ending foolishness. The chemistry between them is funny because Jane sees something good in Frank, while the audience sees the walking disaster that he is. Their connection adds warmth and even more comedy to the story. Then we have Vincent Ludwig, the villain of the film, who is as calm and smooth as Frank is chaotic. Ludwig's motivation is purely evil. He plans to assassinate Queen Elizabeth II using mind control. What's so funny is that he treats this outrageous plan as if it's a normal business strategy, and his polite villainy makes him a perfect contrast to Frank's loud and bumbling style. Ludwig's character doesn't have to grow or change because his role is to provide the challenge Frank needs to overcome. And he does that while keeping a straight face in the middle of the madness. Frank's loyal partner, Nordberg, also brings his own set of hilarious moments, especially when he ends up in the hospital after a comically terrible incident at the beginning. Nordberg's scenes show the strong bond of friendship between the characters, even if Frank's attempts to help often make things worse. The rest of the supporting cast, like Frank's boss Ed Hawken, add to the world's charm, playing serious police officers in a story that's anything but serious. The beauty of the character development in this film is that no one really changes in a deep, dramatic way, but that's exactly the point. The comedy is built on these characters staying true to themselves, even when everything around them spins out of control. Frank remains confidently clueless, Jane remains sweet and supportive, Ludwig remains the cold mastermind. And somehow all of these elements fit together to create a story that's as ridiculous as it is entertaining. The characters, with their strange mix of sincerity and complete absurdity, shape the entire experience and make every scene feel fresh and funny. The performances in The Naked Gun, from The Files of Police Squad, are absolutely the secret weapon that makes this film so unforgettable. The entire cast throws themselves into the most ridiculous situations with such straight-faced seriousness that it becomes impossible not to laugh. Leslie Nielsen, who plays Detective Frank Drebin, delivers a performance that is nothing short of legendary. He plays Frank with complete sincerity, as if he's the most capable detective in the world, even though everything he does is a disaster. Nielsen's genius is that he never breaks character, never winks at the audience, never shows that he's in on the joke. He treats every scene, no matter how outrageous, with the gravity of a Shakespearean drama, and that's exactly why his performance is so hilarious. He turns Frank's clumsiness into an art form and makes every misstep, every awkward line, and every physical gag absolutely shine. Priscilla Presley, who plays Jane Spencer, is another gem in this film. She brings charm, elegance, and a beautifully calm energy to all the craziness happening around her. What makes her performance so perfect is that she plays it completely straight, never pushing for laughs, but her seriousness makes every moment funnier. Jane's romantic scenes with Frank are especially priceless because Priscilla delivers them with a level of sweetness and sincerity that contrasts perfectly with the chaos that Frank constantly brings into her life. She is the perfect partner to Nielsen's wild performance, and together they create some of the most awkwardly adorable moments in the film. Ricardo Montalbán, who plays the villain Vincent Ludwig, brings a smooth, sophisticated presence to the story. He is calm, cold, and carries himself like the most refined evil mastermind. What makes his performance so much fun is that he plays his role with complete confidence, as if he's in a classic crime thriller, while all around him the world is falling apart in the most ridiculous ways. Montalbán's performance anchors the villain's side of the story, giving Frank something serious to push against, even if Frank can barely make it through a scene without knocking something over or starting a disaster. The supporting cast adds even more flavor to the film. George Kennedy as Captain Ed Hawken is fantastic in the way he fully commits to his role as Frank's boss and friend. Kennedy plays the ultimate serious cop, but finds himself stuck in the middle of the absurdity that follows Frank everywhere. His calm delivery and reactions to Frank's endless blunders make his performance a constant delight. O.J. Simpson, who plays Nordberg, also delivers a surprisingly funny performance. His physical comedy, especially in the early hospital scenes, is some of the funniest in the movie. Watching him try to survive the mishaps that Frank unintentionally causes is comedy gold. What makes these performances stand out is that no one is trying to act funny, in the obvious way. The brilliance comes from playing the scenes with absolute seriousness while the world around them is pure madness. Every actor fully understands the tone of the film, and they all commit to the style without hesitation. The leads and the supporting cast don't just support the story. They carry the comedy on their shoulders and make every moment feel genuine. Even when Frank is chasing a hypnotized baseball player, or getting caught in the middle of a parade while dressed as the wrong person. The performances are the heart of the film's humor, and they never miss a beat in making this chaotic adventure a laugh-filled ride from start to finish. The direction of The Naked Gun, from the Files of Police Squad, is a masterclass in controlled chaos, and director David Zucker knows exactly how to keep the comedy rolling at full speed while still telling a detective story that feels like it belongs in a serious crime thriller. Zucker's biggest triumph is in how he shapes the tone of the film. He builds a world where everything is played straight, but everything that happens is completely absurd. It's not just about throwing jokes into a story. It's about crafting every scene so that the jokes become part of the story's fabric. Zucker doesn't let the comedy slow down for a second. He keeps the pacing tight and the energy high, moving from one hilarious disaster to another so quickly that the audience barely has time to recover from one laugh before the next one hits. The way Zucker handles shot composition is another part of his genius. He uses serious, classic crime movie framing to make the most ridiculous things look important. The camera often focuses tightly on Frank Drebin, as he delivers the most clueless lines with total confidence, which makes every moment funnier because the film visually treats Frank like a hero, even when he's knocking over priceless items or causing complete chaos. The visual gags are packed into every frame, and Zucker makes sure the audience's eyes are always scanning the scene, ready to catch the next small, hilarious detail in the background. One of Zucker's unique stylistic choices is how he never lets the characters know they're in a comedy. Everyone in the film believes they are in a life-or-death situation, which makes the madness around them even funnier. Zucker balances the serious performances with completely outrageous scenarios, and this creates a brilliant contrast that drives the film's humor. Whether it's a car chase that turns into a slow-motion crash or Frank giving a press conference while completely misunderstanding every question, Zucker's direction ensures that the comedy is always at the center, but never feels forced. The pacing is one of the strongest parts of the film's direction. Zucker doesn't waste time dragging out scenes or over-explaining anything. He trusts the audience to keep up with the fast flow of jokes, sight gags, and the moving storyline. The baseball stadium finale is a perfect example of Zucker's ability to juggle action and comedy at the same time. The tension is built like a classic sports thriller, but Frank's clumsy heroics, costume mishaps, and wild chases keep the laughs coming in every second of the sequence. Zucker fills the film with visual surprises, unexpected camera angles, and perfectly timed cutaways that often deliver some of the biggest laughs. Another brilliant touch is how Zucker uses background extras and small visual cues to pack extra layers of comedy into each scene. There are jokes happening in the foreground and jokes quietly slipping into the background at the same time, giving the film that rich, rewatchable quality where you can find something new to laugh at every time. Zucker's vision never wavers. He sets out to make a film that feels like a serious cop movie, but operates like a comedy roller coaster where every twist and turn sends the audience into fits of laughter. The film's success is driven by this careful, clever direction that fully understands how to blend story, pacing, and style into one nonstop, hilarious ride. The cinematography in The Naked Gun, from the Files of Police Squad, is one of the funniest tricks the film plays on the audience because it's shot like a serious crime drama, but serves a story that is absolutely ridiculous. Cinematographer Robert M. Stevens treats every scene as if it belongs in a classic detective film. The lighting, the framing, and the camera angles are all designed to create the atmosphere of a hard-boiled police thriller. And this is exactly what makes the comedy land so perfectly. The more seriously the camera treats the world, the funnier the world becomes when everything in it goes completely out of control. The lighting throughout the film leans into the traditional style of film noir with dramatic shadows, sharp contrasts, and intense spotlights in key moments. The way Frank Drebin is often lit as if he's about to solve a deep, emotional mystery only makes his cluelessness stand out even more. This contrast between serious lighting and completely unserious action creates a constant tension that the audience finds hilarious. Camera angles are carefully chosen to mimic the classics. Low angles make Frank look like a hero, high-stakes moments are shot with quick zooms and dramatic close-ups, and wide shots are used to capture the chaos unfolding in the background while Frank remains oblivious. One of the funniest things about the cinematography is how often the camera locks onto Frank with total confidence as he delivers his dead serious lines, even while something completely ridiculous is happening just outside the frame. The camera follows him as though he's the most competent man in the room, which makes the visual gags even sharper when his mistakes become impossible to ignore. There are visually striking moments sprinkled throughout the film, but they stand out because they look like they belong in a different movie. For example, the slow-motion baseball scene is shot like the climax of a dramatic sports film, with sweeping angles, crowd reactions, and tension-building close-ups. But everything Frank does is a complete disaster, from falling over to chasing the wrong people. The cinematography builds the drama, but the story is busy tearing it down in the funniest ways possible. Another standout is the way the camera lingers on the wrong things, intentionally holding shots for just a second too long to highlight the awkwardness. When Frank gives a press conference or walks into a crime scene, the camera sometimes freezes on his confused expressions or slowly zooms in as if he's about to say something important, but the next line is always a clumsy or completely off-topic comment. This deliberate use of framing makes the jokes land harder, because the camera insists on treating every moment as if it's packed with gravity and significance. The chase scenes, action sequences, and even the simple walk-and-talk moments are filled with perfectly balanced shots that mirror what you'd expect in a high-stakes thriller. The fact that the story is instead driven by banana peels, falling objects, and chaotic misunderstandings makes every beautifully framed shot even more hilarious. The cinematography also loves to play with depth. The background is often just as active as the foreground, and the camera quietly captures small visual jokes that reward viewers who pay attention to every corner of the screen. This adds layers to the comedy, turning even a simple dialogue scene into a visual playground. The atmosphere built by the lighting and framing feels serious, but the comedy constantly shatters that mood in the best way. It's as if the camera is in on the joke, but only just barely, and that subtle balance is what makes the visual storytelling in The Naked Gun so endlessly entertaining. The editing and pacing of The Naked Gun, from the files of Police Squad, are like a perfectly tuned comedy engine that never sputters or slows down. From the very first scene, the film moves at a brisk, almost relentless pace, throwing joke after joke at the audience with incredible rhythm. The editing is sharp, clean, and lightning fast, always knowing exactly when to cut for maximum comedic effect. It's not just about moving quickly, it's about knowing when to linger on a character's confused face just long enough to make the awkwardness hilarious, and when to snap the audience to the next ridiculous disaster before anyone can fully process what just happened. This balance keeps the film feeling alive and constantly in motion. The film's flow is a beautiful controlled mess, with the editing weaving together visual gags, wordplay, and slapstick in a way that feels smooth even when everything on screen is falling apart. There are no slow moments here. The transitions between scenes are often quick and punchy, using abrupt cuts or sight gags to jump the story forward without losing energy. When Frank Drebin charges from a press conference straight into a high-speed chase, the editing keeps the momentum rolling, so that the comedy never has to pause for breath. Even the smaller scenes, like Frank's awkward conversations with Jane, are edited with a rhythm that gives space for the humor to build, but never lets the pacing sag. One of the film's secret weapons is how it uses editing to misdirect the audience. A scene might be cut together to make you think something dramatic is about to happen, with the camera building tension and the music swelling, only for the punchline to arrive instantly, breaking the moment in the funniest way possible. The editors play this game constantly, and the result is a film that feels like a sprint through a minefield of comedy, where you never know what's going to explode next. Quick reaction shots, perfectly timed zooms, and rapid cross-cutting during chaotic scenes all help the pacing stay tight and electric. The chase sequences, especially the unforgettable baseball stadium finale, are brilliant examples of how editing keeps the comedy alive even in the middle of action-heavy scenes. The cuts are fast but never confusing, and the editors know exactly when to hold on Frank bumbling through a situation just long enough for the joke to hit, and when to quickly move to the next disaster unfolding just a few steps away. There's a musical rhythm to the editing, almost like a comedy drumbeat that keeps everything moving forward with perfect timing. Even the more dialogue-driven moments are edited to feel punchy and alive. When Frank is interviewing suspects or clumsily navigating social situations, the editing keeps reactions and punchlines bouncing back and forth with just enough breathing room to let the awkward silences land as hard as the actual jokes. The pace never drags, and there's never a sense that the film is rushing past anything important. Instead, it feels like the editing knows exactly what the audience wants and delivers it at precisely the right moment, over and over again. The entire film feels like it's dancing to the rhythm of comedy, with the editing acting as the conductor. The cuts, the timing, the way scenes slide into each other, all of it works together to keep the audience fully engaged and always laughing. The film never wastes a second, and the editing is the glue that holds the rapid-fire madness together, while making sure the ride never loses speed. The soundtrack and score of The Naked Gun, from the Files of Police Squad, are like the perfectly tailored suit for a man who has no idea he's wearing it backwards. The music in this film plays a key role in making the comedy hit even harder, because it takes itself completely seriously. Ira Newborn's score is packed with the kind of bold, dramatic themes you would expect in a hard-boiled detective thriller, but that's where the magic happens. The serious, sweeping brass, the sharp percussion, and the intense, almost heroic melodies wrap themselves around scenes where Frank Drebin is doing the most ridiculous things imaginable. This musical straight face makes the chaos on screen even funnier. The opening theme is a standout moment all on its own. That bold, adventurous music paired with the unforgettable visual of a police siren racing through the streets, crashing through buildings, and even driving on a roller coaster sets the perfect tone for the entire film. The music confidently tells the audience they're about to watch an action-packed cop story, while the visuals immediately let everyone know this is going to be a hilarious disaster. It's a perfect blend of musical sincerity and visual nonsense. Throughout the film, the score continues to act like it belongs in a serious crime drama. Chase scenes are driven by fast, urgent rhythms, filled with brass sections that scream danger and tension. Even though Frank Drebin is probably chasing the wrong suspect or crashing into something he shouldn't. The tension in the music is completely out of sync with Frank's clumsiness, and that gap is where the comedy finds its sweet spot. The soundtrack also knows how to use silence to perfection. In key moments, especially when Frank finds himself caught in a painfully awkward situation, the music drops away, leaving the audience sitting in that quiet, uncomfortable space. This expertly used silence amplifies the humor, as Frank's confused face or slow reaction becomes the loudest thing in the room. The silence doesn't last long, though, because the music always comes crashing back in to pull the scene forward at just the right moment. The romantic theme that plays whenever Frank is with Jane Spencer is another brilliant touch. It's soft, sweeping, and full of emotional weight, making their relationship feel like it's pulled straight from a grand Hollywood love story. The catch is that Frank usually finds a way to ruin those moments almost immediately, whether by saying something completely wrong or knocking something over. And the contrast between the tender music and Frank's hopeless romantic skills turns those scenes into comedic gold. The soundtrack also plays with recurring motifs that subtly remind the audience of Frank's detective identity. Even as he's falling over furniture or delivering bizarre one-liners, the music continues to push him forward as if he's a legendary cop on the brink of solving a massive case. This commitment from the score to stay deadly serious while the world crumbles around Frank gives the film a unique energy that keeps the laughs rolling. The sound mixing is carefully handled so that the score never drowns out the quick dialogue or the background gags, which is crucial in a film where the humor often hides in small visual details and rapid-fire wordplay. The music is always present, always driving the scene, but it knows when to pull back and let the comedy breathe. The balance is so well done that the soundtrack never feels like it's trying to be funny on its own. It's simply the serious heartbeat of a film that's never serious for a single second. The result is a perfect comedic harmony where the score and the story seem to be playing two different games. And that delightful clash makes the entire experience feel fresh, fast, and endlessly entertaining. On the surface, The Naked Gun, from the Files of Police Squad, might look like pure chaos, a film packed with jokes, slapstick, and nonstop visual gags. But buried under all that mayhem are some surprisingly fun and clever themes that keep the film grounded in its own bizarre way. One of the most entertaining themes running through the movie is the idea of blind confidence, and how someone who charges through life with total self-assurance can somehow land on their feet, no matter how wrong they are at every step. Frank Drebin is a walking disaster. A man who misinterprets almost every situation, causes accidents, and leaves destruction behind him. Yet he believes with all his heart that he's the best man for the job. The film plays with this theme relentlessly, showing that sometimes pure determination can accidentally lead to success, even if you have no clue what you're doing. It's a hilarious celebration of clumsy heroism, where mistakes and misunderstandings don't just happen. They're the entire engine of the story. Another interesting theme is the complete breakdown of authority. Frank is a police officer, supposedly a symbol of competence and control, but he represents the opposite. Throughout the film, police procedures, political figures, and even the justice system are presented as fragile structures that can collapse in an instant under the weight of pure stupidity. The movie pokes fun at these institutions by showing how easy it is for someone like Frank to rise to the top simply by being in the right place at the wrong time. The film constantly suggests that those in charge are often no better than the people they're supposed to lead, and sometimes even worse. This creates a world where power is almost accidental, and success comes from stumbling forward without realizing the damage you're leaving behind. The Naked Gun also toys with the theme of perception versus reality. Frank thinks he's solving crimes, saving the day, and charming everyone he meets, but the reality around him tells a completely different story. The film has a lot of fun exploring how people can live in their own versions of reality, completely blind to the actual chaos they're creating. This theme is driven home by the way Frank is treated by other characters. Many of them genuinely respect him, despite his constant blunders, because they see his confidence and assume he must know what he's doing. It's a brilliant commentary on how people often mistake boldness for competence. There's also an underlying message about the absurdity of taking life too seriously. Every element of the film, from the way the score plays everything straight to the deadpan performances, seems to shout that life is already ridiculous, so why not lean into it? The film is constantly showing us serious setups that get undercut by complete nonsense, reminding the audience that even the most dramatic moments can be undone by something as simple as a banana peel or a misheard conversation. It's a playful reminder that sometimes the best way to deal with life's complications is to laugh at them. And of course, the film has a classic theme of love awkwardly finding its way through chaos. Frank's romance with Jane is clumsy, riddled with misunderstandings, and full of the kind of mistakes that would ruin a relationship in any normal story. But here, those blunders actually pull them closer together. It's a sweet, funny look at how even the most imperfect people can find connection when they're willing to stick with each other through disaster after disaster. All of these themes are woven into the film in a way that never feels forced or heavy-handed. The movie is too busy making you laugh to stop and deliver a speech about what it all means. Instead, it lets the comedy carry the messages naturally, making the film both wildly entertaining and sneakily clever at the same time. In The Naked Gun, from the Files of Police Squad, visual effects and CGI aren't really the stars of the show, and that's exactly what makes the visual style so charming. This is a film that relies heavily on practical effects, slapstick gags, clever set pieces, and perfectly timed physical comedy rather than high-tech wizardry. The few visual effects that do appear are used with a wink, almost as if the filmmakers are in on the joke that everything looks just a little bit off, but that's part of the fun. Instead of aiming for realism, the film uses its visuals to make the absurdity feel even bigger and bolder. It's like the world itself is conspiring to make Frank Drebin's life more ridiculous. The practical effects are where the movie shines. Whether it's exploding cars, collapsing stages, or bizarre accidents in the middle of a baseball stadium, the effects feel tangible and satisfyingly over the top. The film doesn't try to hide the fact that some of the stunts are outrageously impossible. It embraces the exaggeration and uses it to create visual punchlines that hit harder, because they feel like they could have been pulled off with nothing more than clever timing and a few well-placed props. When Frank causes chain reaction disasters or gets launched across a room, the effects aren't polished to perfection. They're just messy enough to make them hilarious. One of the film's greatest strengths is how it uses visual gags that don't need complicated effects to land perfectly. For example, when Frank knocks over priceless artifacts or smashes through walls, the simplicity of the effect actually adds to the comedy. The sets and props are designed to fall apart in the most dramatic ways possible, making the destruction look like it belongs in a cartoon rather than in a live-action detective story. And that's exactly the tone the film is aiming for. It's like watching a living, breathing Saturday morning cartoon, where the laws of physics take a vacation. What makes the visual effects so delightful is that they often play against the deadly serious score and the overly dramatic camera work. The explosions, crashes, and awkward pratfalls are treated as if they're part of a high-stakes action thriller, but the timing and execution reveal the joke. This world is held together by duct tape and dumb luck, and Frank Drebin is the tornado tearing through it. The fact that the effects don't aim for realism is what makes them so funny. The film wants the audience to see the seams, to notice when something is a little too perfectly staged, because that's where the humor lives. There's something refreshingly old school about the way the movie approaches visual spectacle. It uses forced perspective, quick cuts, prop tricks, and human-powered stunts to create big comedic moments. CGI, which was still in its early days in the late 1980s, is almost non-existent here, and that works in the film's favor. There's no need for digital enhancements when a well-timed banana peel or a collapsing balcony can steal the scene. The low-tech approach makes the comedy feel immediate and raw, as if the cast and crew were just barely holding everything together behind the camera while the chaos unfolded. The baseball stadium finale is a great example of practical effects pushed to their comedic limit. Players get tackled in ridiculous ways, mascots are flung across the field, and Frank ends up causing total pandemonium, all staged with old-fashioned stunt work and practical setups that are so perfectly timed, they feel like clockwork comedy in motion. The sheer physicality of these sequences makes the humor land with a satisfying weight. You can almost feel the crashes and bumps, which gives the comedy a kind of tangible crunch that digital effects would never have captured in the same way. The movie's visual style is unapologetically goofy and self-aware. It doesn't try to hide its playful edges with slick CGI. Instead, it leans into the joy of real objects falling apart, people slipping, and ridiculous things exploding in ways that don't make sense, but make you laugh anyway. It's a perfect example of how practical effects, when used with great comedic timing, can be more powerful and more memorable than any cutting-edge visual trick. The film's entire visual approach invites the audience to laugh at the spectacle, not because it looks real, but because it looks just right for the kind of madness Frank Drebin brings wherever he goes. The set design and locations in The Naked Gun, from the files of Police Squad, are like carefully built playgrounds where absolute nonsense is guaranteed to happen. The production design does a brilliant job of creating a world that looks just serious enough to support the outrageous comedy without ever tipping its hand. The city looks like the perfect backdrop for a hard-boiled cop story, with police stations, dark alleys, busy streets, and grand civic spaces that scream classic detective drama. But those same sets are just waiting to be destroyed, misused, or turned into the stage for Frank Drebin's next disaster. What's hilarious is how the film treats these spaces with complete sincerity, as if they belong in a gritty crime thriller, yet the action within them is pure, unapologetic chaos. The police station is a standout location that nails this balance perfectly. It's filled with the usual desks, files, and old-school office equipment, but it's also where Frank blunders through every conversation and investigation, often wrecking the surroundings in the process. The design is detailed enough to feel real, but it's sturdy only until Frank walks in. Even something as simple as walking down a hallway or opening a door can lead to an unexpected chain reaction, And the way the sets are constructed to allow for these accidents shows just how smart the design really is beneath the silliness. The film's use of public spaces like city streets, courtrooms, and even the baseball stadium gives the story a wide, open canvas to play on. The baseball stadium in particular is one of the most visually memorable locations in the film. It feels enormous, packed with people, and it carries the weight of an important public event. The production design fully commits to making this place feel authentic, but then it becomes the site of one of the most ridiculous finales ever staged. Frank Drebin causes total havoc during the game, tackling umpires, chasing criminals, and triggering mass confusion, all while the set holds steady as if it's part of a serious sports film. The contrast between the real-world setting and the cartoonish action gives the comedy extra punch. The courtroom scenes and the mayor's office are also crafted to look completely legitimate, adding to the film's joke that Frank is operating in a world that takes itself seriously while he barely knows what's going on. The props like police files, weapons, and even the bizarre gadgets Frank occasionally uses are all treated as if they belong in a real cop movie, but their use is often so absurd that they become visual punchlines all by themselves. A key part of the set design's success is that it never looks intentionally funny. It's the characters and their actions that bring the comedy to life, and the sets quietly support the madness without breaking the illusion. Even Jane Spencer's apartment, which seems to offer a cozy, romantic backdrop, becomes a stage for awkward encounters and physical gags. The space is carefully dressed to feel personal and lived in, but it's also ready to fall apart the second Frank starts moving through it. Whether it's a priceless piece of art getting destroyed or furniture collapsing under pressure, the set is always waiting for its comedic moment. The attention to detail in these sets allows the gags to land without feeling forced because the world itself feels sturdy enough to accept even the most ridiculous accidents. The streets of Los Angeles, with their mix of formal buildings and chaotic traffic, provide the perfect playground for Frank's bizarre car chases and foot pursuits. The city is large enough to feel like a real stage for crime and heroics, but the film constantly reminds the audience that no matter how grand the setting, Frank Drebin is going to turn it into a circus. From high-profile press conferences to dingy warehouses, each location is used to its full comedic potential, with the sets supporting elaborate sight gags and slapstick sequences that keep the story moving at a breakneck pace. The genius of the set design is that it always plays it straight. It's never built to look like a comedy set. It looks like the perfect world for a classic police drama, and that's what makes the humor explode so brilliantly when Frank crashes into it. The props, the decor, the locations, all of them quietly contribute to the film's hilarious rhythm by giving Frank plenty of opportunities to trip, fall, collide, and generally turn everything upside down. The sets don't need to shout to be funny. They just need to stand there and wait for Frank Drebin to do what he does best: cause spectacular, unforgettable disasters. The dialogue and script in The Naked Gun, From the Files of Police Squad, are a masterclass in rapid-fire comedy, packed with wordplay, double meanings, deadpan one-liners, and the kind of jokes that sneak up on you and explode with laughter before you can catch your breath. Every line feels like it's part of a carefully choreographed joke machine, where the rhythm, timing, and unexpected twists in the conversation create an avalanche of humor that never lets up. What makes the dialogue so endlessly entertaining is the absolute seriousness with which the characters deliver some of the most ridiculous lines ever written. The characters speak as if they're trapped in a serious crime drama, but the words coming out of their mouths are pure nonsense. And that contrast is where the magic happens. Frank Drebin's dialogue is the lifeblood of the film. He speaks with complete confidence, as if every word he says carries the weight of truth, but most of the time, he's either misunderstanding the situation or saying something that doesn't make any logical sense. His lines are filled with beautiful misunderstandings and absurd declarations. Take, for example, his habit of introducing himself with lines like, "I'm Lieutenant Frank Drebin, Police Squad. And don't let the police part throw you, I'm a cop." It's the kind of writing that flips the expected police jargon on its head, turning cliches into punchlines. One of the most brilliant things about the script is the way it layers visual gags and wordplay so tightly together that you can easily miss half the jokes if you're not paying attention. The dialogue often sets up jokes that are paid off by a quick visual moment, or vice versa. When Frank confidently tells someone, "Nothing to see here, please disperse," while an explosion rages behind him. The script is playing with the idea that the words don't match reality, and that deliberate mismatch keeps the audience laughing scene after scene. The script isn't just writing lines, it's writing jokes that need perfect timing, straight-faced delivery, and carefully staged visuals to fully land. The supporting characters, like Jane Spencer and Captain Ed Hawken, also have their moments of sharp, witty dialogue, but they play the perfect straight men to Frank's clumsy hero. Jane's lines often flirt with sincerity, offering a brief glimpse of romance or emotional connection. But the film can't resist twisting those moments into comedic beats. Even in the most tender scenes, the dialogue finds ways to swerve into the unexpected, turning romantic exchanges into setups for the next disaster. The humor isn't just about punchlines. It's about setting up expectations and knocking them down in hilarious ways. One of the most entertaining aspects of the script is its obsession with puns, literal interpretations, and jokes that play with language in the most brilliant ways. Frank's conversations are littered with statements that sound like they should make sense, but completely collapse under closer inspection. The film loves to take everyday phrases and twist them into something awkward or absurd. When Frank is told, "Nice beaver," and Jane hands him an actual stuffed beaver, the line perfectly embodies the film's playful dance between dialogue and physical comedy. The humor is rarely crude for the sake of being crude. It's about misdirection, taking the audience down one path and suddenly veering off into total silliness. The script also has an incredible rhythm. There's almost no wasted space. The jokes are packed so tightly that it feels like every single sentence is either setting up or delivering a laugh. But what's impressive is that the dialogue never feels rushed. Even though the comedy moves at lightning speed, the lines are delivered with just enough pause to let the audience process the humor before being hit with the next one. That's a difficult balance to strike, and it shows how finely tuned the script really is. Throughout the film, the dialogue stays true to its mission, to take every serious trope from the detective genre and turn it completely inside out. Whether it's Frank's over-the-top declarations of heroism, Jane's accidental innuendos, or the way side characters always seem to say just the wrong thing at the wrong time, the script never misses a chance to squeeze in one more joke. It's a relentless parade of verbal comedy, wordplay, and miscommunication that keeps the energy sky-high from start to finish. The lines from The Naked Gun have become legendary because they're not just funny in the moment, they're the kind of lines people remember and quote for years. The script is full of these unforgettable gems, and they've become part of the film's lasting charm. It's not just about making you laugh while you're watching. It's about planting those perfectly crafted jokes in your memory so they pop up later, just as funny as the first time you heard them. The Naked Gun, from the Files of Police Squad, doesn't just play with genre conventions, it gleefully flips them upside down, stomps on them, and then throws them out the window. On the surface, it wears the coat of a classic police detective story. It has all the ingredients: the tough, no-nonsense cop, the high-stakes investigation, the shadowy villains, the romantic interest, and the dramatic ticking clock finale. But the genius of this film is that it takes every one of those familiar elements and twists them into pure comedy, never taking a single beat seriously. The film is a full-blown parody of the police procedural and action thriller genres, but it doesn't settle for just poking fun at the edges. It dives right into the heart of those genres, using their most serious trademarks as the foundation for some of the most absurd comedy ever put on screen. What's brilliant is that the film commits so completely to the world of hard-boiled detective stories that it almost tricks you into thinking it's going to play it straight. Frank Drebin's trench coat, the moody lighting, the conspiracies, the criminal underworld, all of it looks like it belongs in a gritty crime film. But the second Frank opens his mouth, the genre starts to unravel in the most hilarious ways. The film takes the clichés of the genre, like the lone wolf cop who plays by his own rules, the clueless police chief who somehow trusts him, and the femme fatale who just might be in danger, and it uses those as playground equipment for its wild, chaotic jokes. Where most police thrillers would build suspense with carefully crafted action sequences, this film builds suspense by showing you how long it's going to take Frank to accidentally destroy something. Instead of a tense shootout, you get a gunfight that's so badly executed it becomes a visual comedy masterpiece. Instead of a smooth car chase, you get Frank smashing into everything in sight while pretending everything is under control. The film follows the structure of a typical crime story, but every step is carefully packed with jokes that make a mockery of the expected formula. The way the film balances action and humor is especially clever. It stages big moments like car chases, shootouts, and even a hostage situation, but it always finds a way to make them collapse into total farce. When Frank's car chase leads to a slow-motion driving disaster that barely reaches walking speed, the film is winking at every high-octane chase scene ever filmed and saying, "We can do it funnier." The film never drops the ball on pacing. It keeps the energy high like a true action thriller would, but instead of leaning into intensity, it leans into disaster, where the tension comes from wondering just how badly Frank is going to mess things up next. The humor doesn't just come from slapstick, though there's plenty of that. It also comes from the film's brilliant use of deadpan delivery and verbal misfires. This is where it stretches beyond the traditional spoof. Many parody films settle for a few gags and rely on familiar genre jokes, but The Naked Gun takes those jokes to strange, creative, and often totally unexpected places. It pushes the boundaries by making the most serious moments the funniest. A dramatic press conference turns into a public relations nightmare when Frank completely misreads the situation. A life-or-death baseball game becomes the stage for Frank's clumsy undercover work, where he impersonates an umpire and practically rewrites the rules of the sport in the process. The film's take on romance also toys with genre expectations. Instead of a smooth, sizzling relationship, Frank and Jane's romance is packed with awkward pauses, terrible timing, and ridiculous misunderstandings. They go through all the familiar beats: first meeting, flirtation, bonding, danger. But every step is hijacked by the script's relentless mission to pull the rug out from under them. Even the villain, Vincent Ludwig, is a classic evil mastermind type, but instead of building him up with layers of menace, the film surrounds him with bizarre assassination plots that collapse thanks to Frank's unpredictable meddling. What really makes The Naked Gun stand out in genre execution is how it fully respects the structure of the detective thriller, while completely subverting its tone. The film doesn't lazily throw jokes at the genre. It understands it, builds a perfect replica of its framework, and then systematically tears it apart with sharp writing, visual gags, and a hero who couldn't solve a crossword puzzle without causing an international incident. It's a film that knows all the rules, and that's what makes breaking them so consistently funny. The Naked Gun, from the Files of Police Squad, might seem on the surface like a wild, anything-goes slapstick comedy that's too busy chasing gags to bother with social or cultural commentary, but tucked beneath all the banana peels and visual disasters, the film actually does take playful jabs at several cultural norms and public institutions, though it does it in such a ridiculous, light-hearted way that it never feels like heavy-handed satire. The film is essentially holding up a mirror to the police procedural genre, the media, celebrity culture, and even American patriotism, but instead of offering lectures or moral lessons, it blows them up with silly string and lets the audience laugh at the absurdity of it all. One of the most constant threads of commentary is its portrayal of law enforcement. Frank Drebin is a walking, talking disaster of a police officer. He misinterprets every situation, causes far more problems than he solves, and somehow still manages to save the day despite his total lack of awareness. The way the film handles this isn't by attacking police work. It's by gleefully tearing apart the untouchable, hyper-competent image that classic cop films and TV shows have built. Frank is the anti-supercop, and his chaotic blunders highlight the gap between how authority figures are often portrayed in media and how they might actually behave if they were as clumsy, oblivious, and accident-prone as real people can be. The film invites the audience to question the blind hero worship of the action hero cop trope without ever saying it out loud. It simply lets Frank's behavior do all the talking. The film also pokes at the seriousness of government and political ceremony, particularly with its portrayal of the police department, the mayor's office, and the high-profile protection detail surrounding Queen Elizabeth II's visit. These moments are ripe with humor because the characters surrounding Frank are all trying to maintain a polished, respectable public image, while Frank is tripping over microphones, knocking podiums into swimming pools, and completely demolishing the carefully staged political decorum. The film seems to suggest that all the layers of formality, ceremony, and self-importance in public life are just one clumsy cop away from collapsing into pure chaos. It's a subtle jab at how institutions can appear polished on the outside, but be totally dysfunctional underneath. When it comes to media and celebrity culture, the film has a blast making fun of it. The entire final act unfolds during a baseball game that feels like a grand American spectacle. The exaggerated TV coverage, the over-the-top national anthem performance, the obsessive focus on the players and celebrities. It all feels like a loving but pointed parody of how sports events in America sometimes become more about the show than the game itself. Frank's disastrous stint as an umpire and his undercover escapades at the game completely undermine the stiff, polished image of these public events. The way the film clowns around with the sacred traditions of baseball, from the ceremonial first pitch to the national anthem, is a playful way of saying that sometimes we take these cultural rituals a bit too seriously. Even the film's treatment of relationships subtly comments on the typical Hollywood portrayal of romance. Frank and Jane's love story is intentionally packed with clichés, awkward timing, and ridiculous situations that explode the idea of perfect movie romance. They are falling in love. Montage pushes the usual syrupy moments to the edge of absurdity, throwing in activities so cheesy and exaggerated that the film seems to be winking at the audience, reminding us that real-life romance is never as smooth or coordinated as the movies make it out to be. It's a clever way of poking fun at the artificial perfection that Hollywood often sells as love. What makes the film's social and cultural commentary so entertaining is that it never steps out of its playful tone to make a serious point. The humor does the work. The film doesn't stop to deliver speeches or force social messages into the story. It simply constructs situations that, when viewed through the lens of Frank Drebin's total incompetence, reveal how fragile, silly, and sometimes hypocritical our public systems and cultural rituals can be. The film has no interest in moralizing. It just wants the audience to laugh, and along the way, it invites them to laugh at authority figures, sacred traditions, and social expectations that sometimes crumble under the weight of their own self-importance. Even when the film briefly touches on international politics, like the security concerns surrounding the Queen's visit, it manages to turn potential diplomatic tension into pure slapstick mayhem. Instead of using the scenario to make a serious political statement, the film uses it as an excuse to unleash a series of comedic disasters that poke fun at how high society, global leaders, and security forces can become totally unglued in the hands of one clumsy, overconfident detective. The film's genius is in showing that behind all the carefully constructed images of power, control, and perfection, there's often a Frank Drebin stumbling around with a loaded tranquilizer gun, ready to bring it all crashing down. The Naked Gun, from the Files of Police Squad, is one of those rare comedies that doesn't just make its audience laugh. It completely sweeps them into a world where every scene is a playground of surprise. Every line has the potential to spin into a joke, and every moment feels like a dare to see just how ridiculous things can get. The film's genius lies in its relentless ability to keep viewers on their toes. Even after multiple viewings, it's hard to predict what's coming next because the film's humor operates on so many levels at once. It's a perfect storm of visual gags, sharp one-liners, physical comedy, and background jokes that you'll only catch if you're really paying attention. This constant layering creates a movie experience that practically begs the audience to rewatch it. Not because they missed the plot, but because they probably missed 10 hilarious details buried in the corner of the frame, or slipped into a casual line of dialogue. The emotional connection in this film doesn't come from heavy drama or tragic arcs. It comes from pure, shared joy. It's the kind of film where you can't help but want to watch it with friends just to see their reactions when Frank Drebin crashes yet another police car, or when a perfectly serious moment is destroyed by a completely absurd gag. The laughter is infectious, and the film invites its audience to lean into that laughter without holding back. There's something universally funny about watching a character who's completely convinced of his own competence, barreling through situations he clearly does not understand, and that shared experience of watching Frank's train wreck unfold pulls audiences together in a very special way. The film doesn't just throw punchlines at the audience. It builds entire sequences designed to pull emotional reactions. Whether that's shock at how quickly things spiral out of control, surprise at a joke you didn't see coming, or genuine delight when the film tops itself yet again with another clever twist. It's not uncommon for audiences to find themselves laughing so hard that they miss the next joke entirely, which only makes repeat viewings more rewarding. The comedic timing is so sharp and the editing is so precise that even when you know what's coming, it still lands with full force. It's as if the film knows you're waiting for the joke and still manages to catch you off guard. One of the ways the film keeps its audience deeply engaged is through its bold, fearless approach to humor. Nothing is too small to be turned into a joke, and nothing is too sacred to be parodied. Whether it's the grand traditions of baseball, the dignity of a royal visit, or the stoic nature of police officers, the film turns all of it upside down, inviting the audience to laugh at the things we often take way too seriously. That kind of humor builds a certain trust with the audience. It tells them that the film isn't afraid to go anywhere for a laugh, and once viewers realize that, they're fully locked in, waiting for the next unexpected punchline. The film also creates moments that stick with audiences long after the credits roll. The baseball scene, Frank's disastrous attempts to impersonate an umpire, the unforgettable press conference, the love story montage that veers into ridiculous territory. These are the kinds of moments that people quote, imitate, and remember years later. They become part of the shared pop culture language. And because the humor is so densely packed, there's always something new to appreciate on each rewatch, whether it's a subtle visual gag you missed, a joke layered in the background, or a perfectly delivered line that hits you even harder the second time around. Audience engagement with The Naked Gun isn't just about the immediate laughter. It's about the way the film builds a connection through joy, surprise, and a fearless willingness to chase the next laugh at any cost. It invites discussion, not about complicated themes or philosophical questions, but about which scene was the funniest, which moment completely caught you off guard, and how it's possible that Frank Drebin made it through the entire movie without realizing just how much destruction he caused. It's a film that doesn't just ask the audience to watch. It dares them to keep up, to notice the rapid-fire jokes, and to surrender completely to the sheer fun of its chaotic world. When you place The Naked Gun, from the files of Police Squad, next to other films in the spoof and slapstick comedy genre, it doesn't just hold its own. It charges in like a wrecking ball wearing a police badge and immediately starts causing hilarious damage. The film comes from the minds behind Airplane, and shares that same DNA of rapid-fire gags, visual comedy, and a fearless dedication to pushing jokes to their absolute limit. What sets The Naked Gun apart is how it applies this wild, off-the-wall humor to the detective and police procedural genre, which up until then, had mostly been played straight in cinema. It takes the seriousness of old-school cop shows and crime thrillers, and tears them apart with the most ridiculous scenarios imaginable. Unlike many other comedies that might sprinkle jokes throughout a structured plot, The Naked Gun is structured entirely around the jokes. Every scene exists as a setup for some visual gag, wordplay, or unexpected disaster, and yet it somehow still tells a coherent story. It doesn't follow the typical crime film formula where the detective slowly unravels the case. Frank Drebin stumbles his way through the investigation, solving problems by accident, and surviving purely on sheer luck and unshakable confidence. This is where the film carves out its own territory compared to more conventional comedies, and even other spoofs. It's not interested in gently poking fun at genre tropes. It bulldozes right through them and creates comedy out of complete narrative and physical chaos. Compared to other spoof films like Airplane, or the Hot Shots series, The Naked Gun brings a slightly more grounded setting, even though the comedy is anything but. Where Airplane parodied disaster films and Hot Shots went after action blockbusters, The Naked Gun laser focuses on crime dramas and police stories, which is why its humor feels uniquely refreshing. Crime procedurals were a staple on television and film at the time, and The Naked Gun grabbed all their stiff conventions, the stern monologues, the high-stakes chases, the melodramatic love stories, and gleefully tripped over them. The choice to base this film on the short-lived but cult favorite TV series Police Squad gave it an edge because it already had a foundation of rapid pacing and relentless joke delivery, but the film version took it to another level with even bigger set pieces, crazier stunts, and a wider range of satirical targets. In the context of the director David Zucker's filmography, The Naked Gun is a natural evolution of his comedic style. Zucker, along with Jim Abrahams and Jerry Zucker, had already defined the modern spoof with Airplane. But here he dials the humor even closer to character-driven comedy while still retaining the nonstop absurdity. Frank Drebin isn't just a vehicle for gags. He's a fully realized comedic figure who exists in a world that constantly bends and snaps around him. In contrast to later entries in the spoof genre that often became a string of disconnected pop culture references, The Naked Gun weaves its gags directly into the story, which makes the comedy feel tighter and more cohesive. When compared to other films in the same franchise, The Naked Gun often stands out as the purest and most explosively funny of the trilogy. Its sequels, while still packed with laughs, started to lean more heavily on exaggerated stunts and larger plots. But this first film hits the sweet spot where every joke feels fresh and the balance between story and humor is perfectly calibrated. There's something uniquely magical about how this film sets the tone, establishing a perfect blueprint for how to mix slapstick, clever wordplay, and sharp parody all within a detective story framework. Even when compared to modern-day spoof comedies, The Naked Gun holds its ground effortlessly. Many contemporary spoof films tend to rely too heavily on topical humor and pop culture references that age quickly. The Naked Gun keeps its jokes rooted in timeless absurdity, physical mishaps, and universal silliness that continues to land decades later. It doesn't matter if you've never seen the serious crime shows it's parodying. Frank Drebin's clumsiness, his overconfidence, and the sheer ridiculousness of his world speak to something funny at a core, human level. It's not about understanding the references, it's about enjoying the beautiful disaster unfolding in front of you. So when you stack The Naked Gun against its genre peers, its sequels, or even the wider body of spoof films, it stands tall as one of the sharpest, most endlessly entertaining examples of how to take a serious film formula and twist it into a playground for some of the best and silliest comedy ever put on screen. It's a film that doesn't just follow the spoof formula. It redefines it by packing every frame with something unexpected, something clever, and something absolutely wonderfully ridiculous. The Naked Gun, from the Files of Police Squad, isn't the type of film that screams symbolism at first glance. On the surface, it's a wild parade of sight gags, puns, and slapstick disasters, but buried within all the ridiculousness is a fascinating layer of playful, almost mischievous subtext that mocks not just police procedurals, but also the way authority, competence, and seriousness are typically portrayed in film. Frank Drebin himself becomes a living metaphor, a man who represents the illusion of control, strutting through chaos with his chest out and his badge flashing, while everything he touches crumbles around him. He is a walking contradiction, a symbol of how people in positions of power can often be hilariously unaware of the disasters they're causing. The beauty of it is that Frank's confidence never wavers. He's a symbol of blind self-assurance in a world that desperately needs a little self-awareness. The film also plays with the idea of perception versus reality in almost every scene. Frank constantly believes he's solving problems, catching criminals, and maintaining order. But the reality is that his successes are either complete accidents or the result of others cleaning up his messes. This clash between what Frank perceives and what the audience knows becomes a recurring motif, almost like a visual metaphor for how institutions, like the police, are sometimes more about the image of competence than the substance. The more Frank believes he's the hero, the more the film playfully reminds us that he's often the cause of the very chaos he's trying to stop. Even the repeated car crash gag, which shows up in multiple scenes, feels like more than just a throwaway joke. It becomes a running visual symbol of Frank's inability to smoothly navigate his world. He can't even park without a disaster. These constant fender benders mirror the larger theme that his life is essentially one long, clumsy accident dressed up as heroism. It's a brilliant way the film keeps reminding us of who Frank really is without ever needing to slow down the comedy to explain it. The love story between Frank and Jane is another area where the film quietly weaves in symbolic layers. Their whirlwind romance is built on a montage of hilariously exaggerated clichés, from sunset walks to clumsy intimacy, as if the film is holding up a mirror to the over-the-top way Hollywood often depicts love. It's not just parody for laughs. It's a metaphor for the artificial, fast-tracked way love is often forced into action films and crime dramas. By cranking the love story up to cartoonish levels, the film symbolically strips away the illusion of the serious romantic subplot and exposes it as another formulaic checkbox, all while letting the audience enjoy the absurdity. One of the most clever symbolic threads is the baseball sequence at the end. Baseball in American culture often represents tradition, order, and the purity of the game. And here comes Frank, bumbling through the national pastime and turning it into total pandemonium. His botched umpiring performance can be seen as a larger metaphor for how even the most revered institutions can quickly unravel under the weight of unchecked incompetence. The stadium, the crowd, the players. Everything spirals into madness because Frank is completely out of his depth, yet absolutely convinced he's doing everything right. It's the perfect visual metaphor for how self-delusion can disrupt even the most sacred rituals. The film also plays with visual motifs like police badges, uniforms, and official ceremonies, using them as symbols of respect and power, but constantly undercutting them with sheer idiocy. The badge, usually a symbol of authority, becomes almost meaningless in Frank's hands, as it's waved around in moments of pure chaos and confusion. It's as if the film is daring the audience to question why we automatically respect symbols like badges when they can just as easily be wielded by someone who has no clue what they're doing. Even the city itself, with its generic skylines and bland backdrops, becomes a subtle symbol. The city is a canvas that should feel gritty and dangerous, like the classic noir crime worlds. But here it's so plain and non-threatening that Frank's over-the-top heroics feel even more out of place. It's a clever twist on the crime film setting. It strips away the grandeur and leaves Frank battling villains in mundane, unimpressive locations, which quietly amplifies the comedy. So while The Naked Gun is often celebrated for its surface-level slapstick and nonstop gags, it's also a playground of deeper visual jokes, ironic symbolism, and clever metaphors that poke holes in everything from crime drama conventions to cultural symbols of respect and order. It's a film that invites viewers to laugh at the obvious, but rewards them even more when they start noticing the sly, subversive commentary hiding just beneath the laughter. The Naked Gun, from the files of Police Squad, didn't just appear out of nowhere. It's actually the big-screen continuation of the cult classic TV series Police Squad, which, despite being packed with the same kind of rapid-fire, deadpan humor, was cancelled after just 6 episodes. The TV show didn't find a big audience in its time, but it laid the perfect foundation for the kind of over-the-top, self-aware comedy that would explode in the movie. The brilliance of the film is how it picks up the DNA of Police Squad and cranks it up to full blast for cinema. It doesn't just continue the story, it amplifies the chaos, the gags, and the sheer ridiculousness in a way that the TV format couldn't fully contain. In the larger context of parody and slapstick comedy, The Naked Gun fits into the legacy of the Zucker, Abrahams, and Zucker trio, the same comedic minds behind Airplane and Top Secret. They had already built a reputation for dismantling genre films with laser-precise humor and visual gags. And with The Naked Gun they specifically targeted police procedurals and detective thrillers, genres that had been treated with an almost sacred seriousness for decades. What makes the film historically interesting is how it arrived at the perfect time to mock the tropes that were saturating both film and television. Detective shows like Dragnet, Columbo, and Starsky and Hutch had created a very specific formula, and The Naked Gun gleefully ripped that formula apart while pretending to play it straight. The character of Frank Drebin, played by Leslie Nielsen, became iconic not just because of the comedy, but because he subverted the classic hard-nosed detective archetype. Historically, Hollywood had celebrated characters like Joe Friday or Dirty Harry, stoic, tough-talking men of action, but Frank Drebin walks right into that mold and shatters it with his obliviousness and clumsiness. The film plays like a loving but relentless critique of the way authority figures were typically glorified in these stories. In many ways, it opened the door for a new style of comedy where the hero could be an absolute disaster but still save the day. In terms of its place in the franchise, The Naked Gun launched a trilogy that continued to follow Frank's misadventures, and each film kept building on the idea that Frank somehow stumbles through life while everything explodes around him. But what's unique about this first film is how fresh it feels even when viewed decades later. It's a time capsule of late 80s filmmaking, but doesn't rely on you knowing the cultural references of the era to enjoy it. It taps into universal comedy, physical gags, wordplay, misdirection that transcends its time period, yet it also gently pokes at the cultural symbols and political figures of its day, from bumbling mayors to hilariously exaggerated villain plots. If we zoom out a bit, The Naked Gun also holds an important place in the evolution of spoof films. By the late 80s, the spoof genre was shifting. Earlier parodies like Blazing Saddles and Young Frankenstein had focused on classic Hollywood genres like westerns and monster movies. The Naked Gun moved that satirical lens onto the world of modern cops and robbers, making it feel incredibly current for audiences at the time. It became part of a key moment where comedy was no longer just about funny lines. It was about visually dismantling the conventions people had grown up watching. Even though The Naked Gun isn't a historical film in the traditional sense, it is a fascinating cultural artifact. It captures the tone, fashion, and police culture of the late 80s in such a ridiculous light that it now serves as an accidental snapshot of that era's storytelling clichés. Looking at it now, it's like watching a perfectly preserved satire museum where every joke, every prop, and every explosion is laughing at the time it was made, while still inviting modern viewers to join in the fun. When it comes to The Naked Gun, from the files of Police Squad, the budget and box office story is just as entertaining as the film itself. The movie was made with a relatively modest budget, especially when compared to the big action flicks of the late 80s that were tossing around enormous amounts of cash for explosions, car chases, and star-studded casts. The Naked Gun wasn't aiming to dazzle with special effects or high-tech wizardry. Instead, it invested in what truly mattered for this type of comedy: impeccable timing, elaborate physical gags, creative set pieces, and Leslie Nielsen's perfect poker face. Every dollar spent was clearly put toward the craftsmanship of the sight gags, the staging of the chaotic sequences, and the meticulous design of scenes that often spiral out of control in the most hilarious ways. The magic, though, was how this modestly budgeted film managed to pull off jokes that looked like they belonged in a much bigger movie. Whether it was the absurdity of a baseball stadium completely descending into madness, or Frank Drebin dramatically surfing on the hood of a car, it all looked surprisingly good without requiring blockbuster-level money. The production team clearly knew how to stretch their resources, making the movie feel larger than its budget would suggest. The comedy was so tight and the performances so precise that nobody ever noticed it wasn't dripping in expensive effects. Instead, the laughs kept piling up, and that was the real currency here. At the box office, The Naked Gun didn't just do well, it became a runaway hit. Audiences absolutely loved it, and it turned out to be one of those word-of-mouth success stories where people left the theater practically begging their friends to go see it. It exploded beyond the expectations for a comedy spun off from a short-lived TV show that most people hadn't even watched. The timing of its release was perfect, landing right in a market that was craving something silly, light, and wildly unpredictable. Viewers showed up in huge numbers, and the film earned many times its budget, making it a major commercial success. The marketing played its part too. The trailers and posters sold it as an over-the-top comedy that didn't take itself seriously for even a second. And that message landed perfectly with late 80s audiences who were more than ready to laugh at the seriousness of cop dramas. Even better, the film's unique style, where it played everything with a straight face no matter how insane the scene got, hooked people immediately. Once the film hit theaters, it took off like wildfire, and the box office numbers just kept growing. It's fascinating how the combination of clever budgeting, sharp marketing, and the sheer force of audience laughter transformed The Naked Gun from a quirky project into a money-making phenomenon. It was the kind of film that proved you don't need a mountain of money to win over the public. You just need the right jokes, the right cast, and a relentless commitment to making every moment count. It wasn't just a hit. It became the start of a franchise and a reference point for all future spoof comedies trying to capture that same lightning-in-a-bottle success. If you're looking to dive into the wonderfully chaotic world of The Naked Gun, from the files of Police Squad, you're in luck because this classic comedy is widely available and super easy to track down. You won't find it in theaters unless there's a special retro screening or a classic film festival that knows how to deliver the laughs, but honestly, this is the kind of film that feels perfectly at home whether you're watching it on your couch, at a friend's house, or even sneaking in a few scenes on your phone when you should probably be doing something else. The film is readily available on popular streaming platforms that specialize in timeless hits, and it often pops up in the comedy sections of big-name services that love keeping cult favorites alive. If you've got a subscription to a major streamer that carries a decent library of older films, chances are you'll stumble across it there, just waiting to brighten your day with one ridiculous scene after another. For those who love to physically collect their favorites, The Naked Gun is available on DVD and Blu-ray, often packaged with the entire trilogy for those who can't get enough of Frank Drebin's misadventures. The home media versions sometimes come with hilarious extras like gag reels and behind-the-scenes tidbits that make the experience even richer. Digital rental and purchase options are also widely available, so if you're in the mood for an instant laugh fix, you can easily rent or buy it on the usual digital marketplaces and start enjoying it within minutes. And the beauty of this film is that it holds up no matter how you watch it. It doesn't need to be seen on a giant screen to deliver its perfectly timed slapstick punches and rapid-fire jokes. But if you really want to experience it at its best, the ideal setup is to watch it with friends or family who appreciate a comedy that doesn't know how to hit the brakes. This film thrives in group settings where everyone can collectively lose it over the absurd sight gags, the deadpan deliveries, and the moments where Frank Drebin barrels through a situation with the elegance of a wrecking ball. It's the kind of movie where you'll probably miss some of the jokes because you're still laughing at the last one, which is why rewatching it is almost mandatory. Whether you stream it, rent it, or dust off an old DVD, the key is to sit back, relax, and let the nonstop parade of comedy chaos take over.